Reconvene tonight's meeting. And I'd like to welcome you to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Board meeting for June 4th, 2018. Would the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you for being here with us tonight. Before we get going, I'd just like to introduce our participants up front here so you know who you're looking at. And I'll start on my far right with Miss Lynn Town, the clerk of the board. Dr. Stan Olson, superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Tom Hearn, vice chair. Miss Lisa May, trustee. Miss Tamara Pickford, trustee. And Mr. Dave Eubanks, trustee. My name is Casey Morrisroe. I'm also a trustee and the chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of tonight's meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through our clerk. Thank you. Approve the agenda first, is that, and then do the addendum? Read the addendum? Okay. So board members, we have a addendum to tonight's agenda, and it's under the consent agenda. Under item A, we'll be adding a third employee C to that, and then under item D, we'll be adding student J. So is there a motion to approve today's agenda with the addendum?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then is there a motion to approve the minutes for the meetings of May 7th, May 15th, May 17th, and May 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Ms. Town. Trustee Eubanks and Trustee Pickford. Are you doing our Inspire Awards?
Yes. Yeah, I have something I'd like to say here. Given that teaching is the one profession that makes all the others possible, and that teaching, therefore, is a cornerstone of civilization, I would like to ask everyone in this room who is either a current or a former teacher to stand up and be recognized. Everyone. If you're a current or former teacher, stand up. And I would like to thank you for your service. Thank you. And now on to the business at hand. Each school month, the Coeur d'Alene School District, in conjunction with the Panhandle Kiwanis Group and also the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership, recognizes and honors an outstanding teacher of that month for whatever month it is, an elementary teacher, a middle school teacher, and a high school teacher. And we also recognize outstanding support staff. So we're going to go ahead and show you who these people are for this. These are the last award winners for the year. And we're going to start off with Jody Versham, who teaches second grade at the Northwest Expeditionary Academy.
And our next Invest, Inspire, and Innovate award goes to Melinda Hennig, who teaches first grade at Fernand STEM Academy.
Michelle Rutherford, where have I heard that name before? Michelle Rutherford, who teaches fourth grade at Bora Elementary.
And the next one is Rebecca Comstock, art teacher at Lakes Middle School.
I'd like to point out that was the first recognition we've done in 5 years outdoors, okay? And the next one is Adam Failing, a great science teacher at Venture High School.
He
And Adam, is that you sitting there? Yes, okay. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Let's see, we have no high school student body reports, so we're going to move. You do an ISBA scholarship? Okay, yeah, that was pulled. So, no high school student body reports, so Mr. Twitchell, if you're ready, we'll go ahead with the Coeur d'Alene Education Association report.
Alrighty, thank you once again as always. And I'd like to start off by just saying, damn it, another tough day in our community. For those that may not know, at Coeur d'Alene High School, we had a young man take his life, and so it's been a rough day at the school. And so I'd encourage everybody, grab your kids, hug them, tell them you love them, grab your parents, hug them, even if you're mad at them, as I know some of you might be. And this kind of goes back to what I spoke about 2 months ago, I think. That definitely kind of mental issues, problems that we might be having that aren't visible, need to be able to communicate more about. And it's not too much information to say that you're having problems and ask for help. Tonight I'm going to try a little bit different format with some cheers and jeers, and we'll see how it goes. First off, cheers to the interest-based bargaining process that resulted in a much kinder, more open process. The fact that we were able to come to an agreement before the end of the school year, it was absolutely mind-boggling that it happened to many people. In fact, many people thought we were joking when we said it, that we were done. And last week, the CEA, we had our meeting. We approved the tentative agreement with 86% in agreement, which actually is the lowest amount voting yes in quite some time. In fact, most people say the lowest that they know of ever, which does not necessarily speak, and they came and talked to us, doesn't necessarily speak to the fact that they didn't like what we did. It was just that it's not enough, and I'll be hitting on that more later. And along the terms of IBB, we're actually absolutely looking forward to the CAPS starting in October, I think it is, the CAPS meeting, to help solve all the problems of the world, possibly. Jeers to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education in Idaho and ultimately creating a divide, as we've seen a divide amongst the staff in School District 271. Cheers to each of you, the school board, who are beat up upon, work many, many hours answering emails, deal with my crud, not quite on a daily basis, but probably too often, more than you'd like to, and you don't get paid a penny for it. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very thankless job, but thank you for all that you do. I'm sure it can't be said enough. Jeers to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education in Idaho. When the cost of living is taken into account, the average teacher has taken an almost 7% pay cut since the 1999-2000 school year. This is not okay, not even close to okay. I don't know what the pay cut has been for the classified staff, the educational support professionals. I'm sure it's probably even more. I couldn't find that information, but the state needs to step it up. They have to. Cheers to employees getting upset that there is not enough funding going around, and they should be upset. This is not the fault of the district. This is not the fault of the CEA. There's only so much of that pie to be split up amongst the people. We wish we could make the money appear out of thin air to give everyone a proper living wage with benefits, but the anger needs to be directed at the state, not at the board, not at the district, and not at the CEA. Jeers to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education. The average annual earnings for a college graduate in the state of Idaho is $62,060. When for teachers, it's $47,504. This is almost a 24% difference. If we're trying to attract the best and the brightest out there to be in the teaching profession, this is not the way to do it. Cheers And I know this was covered last school board meeting, but I didn't cover it, and I feel bad. But cheers to CEA member Kirsten Pomerantz for winning the CEA School Teacher of the Year. She's an amazing educator who busts her butt day in and day out and does everything she can to make each day better for the students at Lake City High School. Jeers. Anyone want to take a guess? Thank you, yes, to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education in Idaho. With the research I did, what I could find in 2016, the total per pupil spending was $7,157. Remember that number, $7,157. And this includes instruction and support services. In Washington, it was $11,534. In Montana, it was $11,348. In Oregon, it was $10,842. Remember, in Idaho, it was $7,157. This is gross, disgusting, sickening. It's not okay. To make things worse, Idaho spent in 2015, so the year before, $22,182 per inmate. In our society, we put money where it counts, where our priorities are at. I think it's obvious the state of Idaho is not valuing education like they should. Cheers to all the School District 271 employees that are part of the CEA. I got to give a little plug here. This is an association that works for its members. It is a bottom-up organization at the local level, the state level, and the national level. We do what our members want us to do. We listen to our members. And so a huge thank you to everyone that is a member. Jeers to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education in Idaho. The notion, or the fact that Idaho, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but says that they will fund 5% of the total student population as being special needs is just ridiculous. We know darn well that that number is much, much higher than that, and it puts districts in a horrible financial situation. Again, the state needs to properly fund education. Cheers to Dr. Olson for his wonderful leadership, candor, and direction he has provided our community in his 1 year with the Coeur d'Alene schools. You will sorely be missed, and we know that when you retire, it probably won't actually be a retirement. You'll probably find another career to move on to after this. So thank you very much for all that you have done. Jeers to the state of Idaho for not properly funding education in Idaho. The educators across the state are watching very closely at the next legislative session. The educators and ESPs of Idaho have watched other states and what they have done to ensure that education is properly funded, not just for those working there, but for the students, to make sure the students have all that they deserve. Will we have to follow suit? I hope not, but it's not off the table. Before I get to the final one, I'll take a moment here I have written here personal privilege. I don't know if that's the right term or not. But there, amongst the district right now, is a notion that the CEA does not value or does not care our educational support professionals or the classified employees. I'm here to tell you 100% that is absolutely not true. Not true at all. Everything that we do, we take into account everybody that is into the district. When it comes to negotiations, for the approximately 10 years that I have been part of negotiations, everything we do, we ask, well, how is this going to affect the classified people? When we are fighting for our insurance benefits, we take into account that that is one of the reasons that the classified employees are here. We know they're underpaid. We know they're overworked. It is horrible. It's disgusting. It doesn't make it right, but it's what it is. But we try to do everything we can for them. Recently, I was informed that in Post Falls, they don't start getting the full benefits until they're working 32 hours a week. In our district, it's at 20 hours a week. That is from years ago, the CEA fighting for that. We absolutely care about them, value them, and want the best for the classified support professionals that we have in this district. They are the foundation of this district. We could not do our jobs without them. Everyone that I work with, I love them personally, and it would kill us if they were to leave. It would kill us as a district. And so I would love to have that cleared up, that everything we do, we are thinking of them and value them each and every day. Lastly, cheers to the hardworking members of the whole School District 271 making it to the end of another school year. It's been a rough year at many schools, and today it got even rougher at Coeur d'Alene High School. We hope that we don't have to go through this again. We'll be back next year. We'll be back to welcome the students there. We'll have our arms open, and we want to give them a safe and secure place to spend their school days and give them a first-class education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twitchell. Okay, we are at the point of our meeting for public comment. I'd like to remind the public, while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during the public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you would like to present to the board, you may provide those comments in writing to the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. Ms. Town will ensure that the board members receive this additional commentary. Please keep in mind, board members will not respond to public comment. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. And we've got a pretty full sheet tonight, so we'll get started here. First up is Ben Mello. Welcome, Mr. Mello.
Hello, I'm Ben Mello. I live at 913 East Garden. I sent an email out to the board last week about full-day kindergarten, and one member, Tom Hearn, responded to me, and also Lisa May responded to me personally today. I want to thank them for doing that. It means a lot to me. We chose to live here in Coeur d'Alene. We chose to live in Sorensen School District. My wife grew up in Coeur d'Alene. She went to Sorensen as a kid. She teaches there, and she asked me to remain civil today because of those reasons. I have 2 kids that go to Sorensen. My daughter Frankie and my son Benjamin, they've both attended half-day kindergarten. And it wasn't until this year that I found out that Sorensen was one of the only 2 schools in the district that didn't have full-day kindergarten. And I was appalled at that. I think every kid should have the right to go to full-day kindergarten in our school district. And just because we, in theory, live in a higher socioeconomic area, the Sorensen, Hayden Meadows, doesn't mean that our kids shouldn't have the right to go to full-day kindergarten and not have to pay extra for that right. Because I live in Sorensen School District and my taxable property dollars are higher than other places, that shouldn't mean that I have to pay twice for the same rights as someone who lives in Fernan or Bora. That being said, I am in support of this pilot program. I hope that it goes through, and I hope that you guys look next year to find a way to fully fund Sorensen and Hayden Meadows kindergarten programs. The statistics are there that it's better for our kids to go to full-day kindergarten. I highly recommend you guys looking at what it would cost for a full-day teacher at both of those programs, and if to be spread out to everybody within Coeur d'Alene, not just the folks that live in Fernan Sorensen or Hayden Meadows. I think that's an unjust burden on us as taxpayers. That being said, if you cannot find that, I would like to find out what the cutoffs are for kids getting the scholarships, and also, since Sorensen is a magnet school, I would like to find out if you're unable to fully fund these programs, which I hope that you're able to do, since it should only be like pennies on the dollar for people who have property here in the city. But if you're unable to do that, then my recommendation would be that kids who choose to come into Sorensen from outside of the area, whether it's Post Falls or other places within Sorensen, would be required to have their full-day kindergarten paid for, and the ones who are within the Sorensen or Hayden Meadows school area. That's pretty much it. Tom did respond to me. I appreciated his responses to me, and I appreciate everything you guys do up here. I know it's a heavy burden you guys work with, and I really do appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mello, for coming and speaking tonight, and also for the email. I know I said board members weren't going to respond, but I'm just going to quickly respond. We have 11 elementary schools in the school district, and we provide all-day kindergarten at 4 of them. So we have 7 of them that do not have an all-day kindergarten option. So I just wanted to clarify that. But thank you for being here, and thank you for speaking on that. Right. And Ms. May also reminded me, we no longer, at the elementary level, because of crowding, do not accept out-of-district transfers. There is some exceptions based on if their family was already there, but we won't get into all that. Okay. Next up is Charlene Babb. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Charlene Babb. I work at Sorensen Magnet School of the Arts and Humanities.
Charlene,
And I don't-
sorry to interrupt. Is the mic on there? The little red button? Front it? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Here we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. I don't have a prepared speech. I just have a heavy heart about the recent suicide at Coeur d'Alene High School. I work at elementary school level, and this, I feel like it's an epidemic. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but at the high school and recently at the middle school, and I work at an elementary school, and I don't know what to do. I feel I don't know how to help the parents that call me and are heard about what's happening, and they don't have a direction to go. I don't know what to do other than continue to reach out to my students. And I don't know, could more be done? Probably, but I don't know. I just want you to know that my heart is heavy, and I know I'm probably not alone in this. And I'm just looking for tools to help not only my elementary students, but middle school and high school and the parents. And if there was any task force or anything like that, I would want to be a part of that, because it's something's happening. And I think we need to address it. I know we have, with the workshops. I think the attempts have been wonderful, but I think there could probably be more. And so I'm here to help if I can help in any way. I don't know what, but I'm just concerned for myself, my colleagues in high school, and the kids. That's my unprepared speech.
Thank you, Ms. Babb. I think you've echoed the feelings that all of us are feeling today in this year. So thank you. Okay, next up, I think I'm reading this right, but is it Darby Vanneman? Okay. Good evening.
I don't have a prepared statement. Just wanted to come and say I am excited for full day kindergarten. I live in the Nexus School District, but I apply to have my kids go to Hayden Meadows. That's where their grandma teaches music. And so it's fun for them to be able to go to school with their grandma and see her every day. I am very excited for the opportunity for my now 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old, who is starting kindergarten this fall, to be able to go to a full day kindergarten. It would be fantastic. I am a little bit concerned about paying extra money to be able to have a scholarship for kids that cannot afford to be in the tuition-based kindergarten, only because I know how tight my budget is. And I know that at Hayden Meadows, we rely a lot on parent involvement and a lot on the good people that live around us to be able to support our raffles, to pour money into our school, which we do an excellent job of. And I'm afraid that if we do have to pay that extra $100 a month, that would hurt our school in the funding aspect of it. Also, I know that there are a lot of options available for those who cannot afford the all-day kindergarten. There's School Plus that can also be subsidized with ICCP funds. There's a lot of other things that can be done for those parents who do need their kids to be taken care of all day while they're at school, while they're at work. I do both. I understand that it's a trial sometimes to find the childcare, to be able to go to school, go to work, which I do both of, and be able to be a good parent, to be able to be there for your kids. So I would just ask that if we do end up doing the full day kindergarten, to please try and keep it to the $250 a month, so that we can have that money then go back into our schools and not have that scholarship option, that if they can't afford it, they do have the other option of the half day with School Plus, or they can even request a transfer in district to a kindergarten that is full day. If there is space, I understand that there's not a whole lot of space in the district, but that would be my concern. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Chris Meyer.
Good evening, the administration, the board. Thank you guys for allowing the public comment tonight. My name is Chris Meyer. I live at 1034 East Pine Avenue. I too, like Ben, am a Sorensen dad, and have been excited to be a part of that program in our neighborhood. I would also like to take a moment to issue condolences to our community for the loss. That's a needless tragedy today, so I'm saddened by that and hoping that we can produce better outcomes as we as a community pull together in light of that. To pivot to the half full side of the glass, I'd like to talk a little bit about the unique opportunity before us with the all-day kindergarten program. As the staff report produced in your packet tonight, all-day kindergarten has proven benefits. The academics are very clear. Access to early childhood education improves the outcomes. So why should we as a district not be considering, as you are, to your credit, these new ways to provide this access? I'm a product of the school district system here. I've waited a generation for a legislative solution. It's simply not coming in our community. We've waited 25, 44 years, whatever that number might be. We're just not moving in that direction as a state. And we have generations of kids passing through the system that are missing that opportunity for those very critical early years. So I commend Bruce and his jeers to the legislature. We all have our challenges in the primaries and elections about how to make those changes, but it's really not materialized so far as a community. So we need to take control of the unique opportunities we have in front of us. In the spirit of free market entrepreneurship, oftentimes today in startup companies, the ethos of fail fast is a good one. This is a great opportunity for us to, as a community and as a district, to fail fast. We have a one-year pilot program. We try it as proposed. It's economically neutral to the district, so why not? What's the opportunity cost not to try this? We have 2 schools. It's a chance to decide what works, what doesn't. Is there a chance to tweak the economics where we can take and roll this out to the other 7 schools that don't have it? So we do have the equality across the district that many tonight have spoke about. I think it's a unique opportunity. I really encourage our board not to pass this up. It may not be perfect, but sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. We had the unique circumstance where 6th grade was eliminated at Sorensen. We now have classroom space. So let's jump on this right now. We've done a great job of introducing the idea, evaluating it thoroughly with several proposals as outlined in the newspaper articles. Here's one that's economically neutral to the district. We can test to see how our community values this opportunity to provide more resources for early childhood education to improve educational outcomes in our community. Let's please try to find some solution tonight to move forward with that program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Next up is Rachel Felling.
Hi, I'm Rachel Failing. I live downtown. I'm in the Sorensen School District. I have 2 kids currently at Sorensen, and I have 1 incoming kindergartner. I don't think we're here to debate that we all would prefer to have all-day option everywhere. We are in the Bryan and Sorensen School District. We could send our daughter to Bryan, but then we're not guaranteed her to go to school with her siblings the following year. So I'm here to speak in support of the pilot program, and we will gladly pay the tuition-based. I would prefer the less, but we will pay the either option, and thanks for considering it.
Okay, Jennifer Drake.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I am Jennifer Drake, Sorensen alumna, K through 5, and current Sorensen parent. Thank you, school board, for all the work you've done this year, including what you've done so far to make full-day kindergarten program at Sorensen a reality. I know these things don't just happen on their own without research and a lot of consolidated effort. However, that's exactly why I'm here to speak again today. In the case of full-day kindergarten, the research has been done and the coordinated efforts have already been undertaken. The recent suggestion that more time should be sent to put it before another subcommittee to discuss an issue that already has general consensus, to me, is illogical. Why would you spend more time and limited resources to research something that has already been proven across our state and country? That full-day kindergarten can be very beneficial to students and their families alike. Some people might argue that it's not fair. If we can't do it at every school, then we shouldn't do it at any. But what this should really be about is doing the best we can, where we can, for as many students as possible. And for Sorensen, there truly is no time like the present. There is classroom space available, the school faculty seems willing, the theoretical resources have been laid out, and the student demand is definitely present. Yes, it's not necessarily fun or easy to implement a new program, but that's not a sufficient reason to put off something that is good for our children. Relatively speaking, with all of the important and often difficult work the school board handles district-wide, this is a pretty simple cost-benefit analysis. The cost to the district is low, and the benefit to these young, eager students is high. As part of the CDA 2030 initiative, we made it a point to ensure that Coeur d'Alene is a community of education excellence. A huge part of that is projects like Opening Books, Opening Doors, a $600,000 partnership between the district, U of I, and community organizations to ensure that kids from K through 3 learn to read so they can read to learn. If you look around, it's easy to see that this and every other critical program designed to start kids on a pathway of education success starts in kindergarten. And you will never convince me that 3 hours or less is a sufficient school day. Please let this program begin this fall so we can use our time wisely and have a full day program finalized sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Sarah Williams. Good evening. Nice to see you back.
Hello, nice to see all of you. Thank you again for a wonderful school year. And as you all know, this school year there's been several mass shootings across the country, and my topic of concern is school safety. I don't know how many days this year I've dropped my high schooler off while the news was discussing another school shooting. And as a parent, that is very disconcerting. I'm very worried, that I always look at my son and just think, I hope this is not the day. And luckily, we have made it through this year without. In March, students in our school district and across the nation participated in the national walkout, as well as there was a march held in many cities. Coeur d'Alene was one of them. So it's not only parents who are concerned about this, but students are also worried about this issue. The Idaho State Legislature has not taken the issue up in any shape or form, and my guess is that they will not. And so that leaves me to believe that it's up to the school districts to ensure school safety. After the Sandy Hook shooting, our school district put in a lot of door locking systems at all of the schools, and there are SROs in many of the schools. However, some of the places where school shootings happened had those security features as well. So I would encourage the school board to take up the issue and start discussing it, perhaps forming a committee made of parents, students, and security officers or people who know law enforcement to come up with some kind of plan for our school to see if there's anything else that we can do here. I know that's what they did in Texas after this recent school shooting, and perhaps that would be something that would work here. So I would really appreciate to have a discussion happen about this. Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least tonight is Rachel Van Hill.
Hi. Hi, my name's Rachel Van Hill, and I am part of the Hayden Meadows School District. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for doing your job of helping our school system. It's a very tough job, and I just want to thank all of you. I am actually very, very excited for the all-day kindergarten, something that my husband and I have talked about for a very long time. I grew up in a state kind of similar to Idaho in South Dakota, and right now their school system is a lot bigger than the Coeur d'Alene School District, but they have all-day kindergarten, free all-day kindergarten for every single school in the district, and even free pre-K. So South Dakota wanted to up their testing scores. I think Ben and maybe Chris touched on this. The research is there that the sooner that you get these kids into a program, not only will you see those test results accelerate in first grade and third grade, but even far beyond that as well. And so I'm a strong believer of trying to get these kids into a program as soon as possible. So I'm a huge advocate for early education as early as that can be. And please don't just stop at kindergarten. Please consider pre-K as well, because the statistics are there in South Dakota to show that their program is working. And they also had very low testing scores and were kind of like low on the bottom barrel when it comes to education, and it has increased. So just maybe do a little research with other states as well, which I'm sure you have. I think I have more questions than I do comments, and maybe this information was out there and I missed it. But I guess I don't know exactly what's being piloted. Like I said, maybe the information's out there. I don't really know. If we have 4 out of the 11 schools that have already done this and it's been proven to work, I guess I don't understand why we need to pilot it. I think there's been a huge amount of interest already. So I guess when you guys come to your vote tonight, maybe the information that you put out to the parents can include that, because I think there was a lot of questioning of what is exactly being piloted when it's been proven to work in 4 other schools. And it was also proven to work in Garwood Elementary, which is not part of our school district, but just another school just right north of Hayden Meadows that we can also take a look at and consider what made the change for them and why it was successful for them. Probably another thing is where is the money going that you are collecting for tuition? I think that would be a question that a lot of parents have. Where exactly are those funds going to? And maybe why you guys made the decision to make it a tuition base versus a free education for the piloting program. I know that there are general funds available. I don't know how much, but I know that there is always money that you guys can find, hopefully, or maybe find a sponsorship that would sponsor 2 of these schools. And I know that they are higher economic areas, but there are still some families that still want to have their child be part of that all day and are just scrounging around for pennies in order to even pay that $250 every single month. I would like it free, but I think we're probably beyond that decision for this year. We are more than happy to probably pay any amount. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. Pay any amount for this, because our family is just such a strong believer in education. But I think to make it fair for everybody, because what I have heard from both sides of just kind of stepping back and listening to parents, is that there are parents that are not okay with the $350 per month in order to help subsidize families. because that's being unfair to them and taking advantage of their financial situation. But on the other hand, you know, my heart breaks because everybody should be allowed to have this amazing opportunity. So in my opinion, in order to keep this fair on both sides, it should just be free. And like I said, I'm sure that that is not an option for this year, but just some questions to consider. And then when you guys do educate the parents of your guys' decisions, if you guys could maybe have some answers to some of those questions, because those are just the same questions that I've been hearing circulating around. But thank you for considering this and taking a vote on it, and thank you for all that you guys do to help us out.
Thank you, Rachel. Are you Amaya's mom? Okay. Yeah, well, thanks for being here. Okay. That gets us through public comment. And Dr. Olson, you are up with your superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. 3 quick items tonight. Number 1, an update on the interview process for the Coeur d'Alene High School principal. The process is continuing. We had a visit last week from Brett Heller, who is a middle school principal with high school experience in the assistant principal role and in a teaching role. Do, by all accounts, and I'm saying this from the feedback forms that came from students, from parents, and from staff, did an exceptional job in the interview process. We are vetting his credentials, we're vetting his experiences, and we expect within a week to have a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. So the process is ongoing, and I need to say to you that we have a very strong and very solid candidate in the person with whom we're speaking. Item number 2 is the boundary action. There's probably a number of people in the audience tonight that don't know about this, but the district has worked for the entire year with the Post Falls School District to revise our external boundary. The current boundary was struck probably 80 years ago when there were farms abutting each other and zigzagged a boundary which created complications for home builders and home buyers and homeowners as to where their children would go to school. We've had several annexation issues back and forth between the Post Falls District and ours, and also an opportunity to take a look at some property that Trustee Eubanks brought to our attention. We had a long process this year with the Post Falls School District, their superintendent, board chair, and board of trustees. And the end result was there was agreement between the 2 districts that the new boundary would be Hutter Road until we got close to the river, and then we would, and I'm trying to remember the name of the subdivision there, the Mill River subdivision would not be split. In that we were reminded by several people that some of them had kitchens that were in the Post Falls district and bedrooms in the Coeur d'Alene district. So we've reached an agreement. We had to establish a petition and a dossier of information about not only the proposal but the process. Took it to the State Board of Education, and we've been apprised that it will be added to the board agenda for the 21st, I'm wishfully thinking here, of June. We got another piece of information that will be finalized this week, that it might be added to a consent calendar as opposed to a general calendar, which would mean that it has passed the first, second, and third levels of review, and it looks like that this is going to happen. So I thank our Board of Trustees, and I thank the Post Falls Superintendent and Board of Trustees for the work they've done, and also thank our citizens and staff for being extraordinarily patient dealing with the boundaries over the years, and hopefully this change will create great benefits, first and foremost for our students and families, but every bit as important for our districts and the opportunity for us to increase land for future construction of schools. Item last is contract issues. It's no secret to any of us in the room that we received a petition this week, a growing petition this week. It came in several stages, which represented concerns on the part of our classified staff relative to the contract settlement that's before the board tonight and already approved by the CEA. We need to say again, as we said in our response to the petition, that we agree with you. We agree, as President Twitchell said tonight, that the current structure for compensating classified employees is out of whack and has been so for quite some time. That's why the CEA and the district agreed to give additional dollars to the classified employee groups in this last set of negotiations, but also stating when doing so that more has to be done. What has been proposed in the process is tied to the interest-based bargaining program, and that is that next year we put into place a series of monthly meetings that tackle problems. And what has been suggested is that we not only make this a primary agenda item, but that representatives of the classified employee groups be active participants in the process from the beginning. That we sit down using the interest-based process and review what our current status is and how it compares to other districts. A second proposal has been that we do what's called a classification and compensation study. And that is where an organization like a school district will take all of the employee groups in the district and compare and contrast the salaries and the salaries and benefits of our employees to those of other organizations who employ like roles. And it will help us create what's known as a market standard. I've done a few of these in other states, and generally speaking, it is the way to create an ongoing response to inequities and inconsistencies with scales and programs. Our board has looked at the concept of doing this. Our incoming superintendent has looked at the concept of doing this. Our interest-based bargaining folks from the district and the CEA have looked at this and said, let's go to work. Let's put this plan together and let's come after it. We recognize that we have not done enough for classified employees. I've heard this all year long, and I'm in total agreement with the statement. I'm in total agreement with the conversation, and I think our incoming superintendent is as well. So the fix for this situation is not in some quick action that robs Peter to pay Paul. Again, Mr. Twitchell said it very, very well after spending over 40 hours studying the budget and the budget process and the budget history, is that pie only can be cut so many ways and so many times. What we need to do is create a sustaining, ongoing review of salaries and put into effect solutions that will improve the salary and benefit structure for classified employees in this district on a consistent basis. I very much appreciate, and our board very much appreciates, hearing from our staff about this. We thought you did a heck of a good job in a very short period of time in saying, hey folks, it's time to draw this to the attention of everyone and go to work on it. We have heard you. We know we need to do the work, and we have set into motion the process that will get us where we all need to go. Thank you very much.
Dr. Olson, I had a question on item number 2. I'd requested some information, I think, at a prior workshop on the differences in appraised values as we line up the boundary and the number of students that we may expect with the new housing development. Do you have any of that information?
I don't have it with me tonight, but it's in the works.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. Board of Trustee comments. Trustee Hearn, you have something down here with the ISBA resolution on seatbelts.
Yes, I'll try not to take too long on this. About a year and a half ago, the Board of Trustees decided to spend the money to put three-point harness seatbelts in all new buses purchased by the school district. And that has happened. The new buses do have those. And Idaho School Board Association has a process of resolutions where at the annual convention we discuss resolutions, and that becomes the policy of the School Board Association. This district, our board, passed a resolution last year asking basically for the legislature to appoint an interim committee to make recommendations on the use of the three-point harnesses and then to come up with appropriate funding for their use statewide. Well, that failed in the convention. Failed for a couple reasons. One was that some districts questioned the additional safety benefit of the cost of seatbelts, which is about $7,100 per bus. There's also concern that if the legislature studied this problem, they may think it's great, but they won't fund it. That's been a classic thing we've had in this state, where they consider it to be an unfunded mandate. And the third reason it failed, and this is feedback I got from trustees who voted against it, was that we can now actually put seatbelts in buses without the blessings of Boise, and it was considered a local governance issue. So what happened recently was that the National Transportation Safety Board, just in reaction to some bus crashes in Tennessee, Baltimore, and New Jersey, have now upped their recommendation where they are recommending lap shoulder seatbelts in all school buses. That's new. Before they are, and basically, for the article I read, it said they're kind of tired of the word they use is tiptoeing around this issue. They've strongly recommended it, and it's nice that the Coeur d'Alene district is ahead of the curve on this one. So, as a result of that, ISBA has asked for us to reconsider submitting our resolution again. I've told them we'll do that, or I'll present it to the board if they can show me wording we can use that would help get this passed. I don't want to go down and speak in front of the convention again and have it shot down. So just for the information of the trustees is that I am working with ISBA, and we may or we may not have a resolution to consider at our July meeting. And that they have to be into the ISBA governing body by the end of July. So we may or may not have it. I'm working with them, but I can't guarantee anything. So, but I do think it's important that we were ahead of the curve. Now the National Highway Safety Board, Transportation Safety Board has recommended them, which I think is a good thing. Thank you.
And I would like to thank you, Trustee Hearn, for bringing this to our attention and pushing and pushing and pushing till we got it done. Thanks.
Okay, I've got a couple of issues on here, a couple items on here. First, just want to remind the board that our next meeting, our regular scheduled monthly meeting, July 2nd, will be our annual meeting. And so we're going to set our calendar for the year there, at least for our regular meetings, and also elect our board officers. So just wanted to remind you of that. As you know, the last 2 years I have served as chair, and that is at the election of the board. I just want to say I'm willing to do that if you would like for continuity purposes. If not, I'm more than willing to not do that. So again, we'll take that up July 2nd, and we'll see what happens. The other item I wanted to just bring up here was Dr. Olson. He received some praise earlier from Mr. Twitchell from CEA, but this will be our last televised regular board meeting with Dr. Olson sitting up here with us. And on behalf of the board, we just want to thank you for leaving your family behind in Boise and for living the bachelor life for the last year up here with us, and just your support and your guidance and the expertise and the ideas you've brought to us. And some new words. I learned some new word combinations. But thank you. We really appreciate you joining us here and all that you brought to Coeur d'Alene School District. So thank you.
For the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity. 2 years. Thank you very much.
Me? Yeah, I have something to say. And I'll try to make this as quickly as I can. In case you have heard a rumor to the effect that I will be leaving my trustee position at the end of the month, I would like to take this opportunity to confirm that yes, indeed, I am leaving the board. And let me tell you why. After 43 years in the classroom, and now another 5 years in the boardroom, which if you add the two numbers together comes up to almost 50 years or half a century in public education, my wife and I have decided to move on and truly enjoy retirement. 48 years, my God. Okay? Hey, so I have a few more things to say here. Before leaving, I would like to take a few moments to reflect on my tenure on the board, on the 5 years spent primarily and in various combinations with Tom Hearn, Krista Hazel, Casey Morrisroe, Tambra Pickford, and most recently with Lisa May. Since 2013, when I got on this board, our board has accomplished quite a bit. There's still plenty to do, but we've accomplished quite a bit in 5 years. And I've taken some time here to list some of the more notable successes, starting with way back when, adopting and implementing the Common Core standards for improving education. And then also in the last 5 years, we've taken deficit spending in our district, which used to be the routine, and now it is the exception. And we just found out in our executive, I can't even tell you that, but I happen to know that we are ending this year in the black again. Okay, that's really cool. Since 2013, our board has implemented all-day kindergarten programs, as we were just discussing, in 4 of our elementary schools. Our district, as Tom Hearn was just referring to, has purchased new school buses with 3-point harnesses to better protect our kids in the event of an accident, something the federal government now finally recommends. And this board has reinstated, at least a few years ago, has reinstated the teaching of cursive writing for all 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. We've strengthened and expedited more thorough background checks. Thank you, Krista Hazel, for our potential employees. And through 4 years of Jingle Books, which I've been intimately involved, our board has facilitated the collection and distribution of more than 115,000 children's books. And this has been for all of our K-3 kids to help improve their literacy before entering 4th grade. As someone said earlier, and it bears repeating, I think they alluded to this earlier, our kids learn to read K through 3, and starting in 4th grade, the expectation is they will read to learn. Let's see, what else do I have here? I'm trying to get through this quickly here. In my first year on the board, we gave our teachers their first real pay raise in 5 years. And since then, we have improved our relationship with the CEA to the point, it was a little rocky there for a while. We've improved our relationship with the CEA to the point where this year, through interest-based bargaining and under the leadership of Dr. Olson, contract negotiations are just about over already, and this school year isn't even over. And that's contract negotiations for next year. Thanks to everybody who's helped in that regard. A couple more things. In the 5 years I've been on this board, we, the trustees, and I figured it up, we have reviewed and updated almost all of our district's many hundreds, or is it thousands, of board policies, maybe 10,000, and procedures.
Like
we have also personally, all of us, most of the time, personally delivered in the spirit of former trustee Vern Newby some 2,700 shiny red apples to every teacher in the district on the first day or two of each school year over these 5 years. And we've also created in our time on the board, in my time on the board, a monthly recognition program in conjunction with the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership in Panhandle Kiwanis to honor outstanding district employees. Since its inception, we have recognized approximately 125 distinguished teachers with our Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award, and we have presented more than 50 Shining Star Awards to outstanding members of our support staff. I'm almost done here. Early this spring, with the goal of improving both the teaching and learning environment in our secondary classrooms, this board courageously created a policy requiring students to turn off their cell phones and have them out of their hands and off their bodies during class time. And over the years, our board has made many impressive new hires, but none quite as sterling as hiring interim superintendent Dr. Stan Olson, and beyond that, our new permanent superintendent, Dr. Steve Cook. As a needed step toward easing overcrowded in our elementary schools, this board reopened Hayden Lake Elementary as the Northwest Expeditionary Academy under the brilliant and creative leadership of Mr. Bill Rutherford. And in the spring of last year, we were able to simultaneously pass a levy and a bond with some of the highest percentages of support ever. That bond is currently paying for the remodel and expansion of both our main high schools, for the long overdue second half remodel of Lakes Middle School, for needed improvements to both Dalton and Fernan elementary schools, and for the purchase of a new 560 student elementary school to be built on the site of the Northwest Expeditionary Academy. This bond is also helping us acquire some 50 acres near Hutter Road for future school sites. Thank you, Mr. John Swallow. And in addition to a 7-acre site on Prairie we recently agreed to purchase, our school district will soon have a land bank sufficient to provide new school sites in the foreseeable future, something it hasn't had in a long time. And the final addition to this summary of notable board successes over the last 5 years has to do with something Dr. Olson has already talked about. After 9 months of intense effort, primarily on the part of Dr. Olson and Board Chair Morrisroe, we are now only weeks and maybe even days away from officially realigning the boundary between the Coeur d'Alene and the Post Falls School District. A far-sighted move that will potentially make even more land available for our growing school district. Rounding third, heading for home. Probably the single greatest accomplishment of the Coeur d'Alene School Board in the past 5 years, as evidenced by the overwhelming community support of that last levy and beyond, I believe has been to provide a sense of stability and competence over this district. As I prepare to leave the board, I can assure our students, staff, and all stakeholders that the good folks who sit up here on this dais with me, and I'm going to name them, Tambra Pickford and Lisa May and Tom Hearn and Casey Morrisroe and the future superintendent, because you're not going to be here any longer than I am, Steve Cook, and also Miss Lynn Town, the most amazing board clerk in all of the human history. What the heck? Okay, I can assure you that you're going to be in the best possible hands here. These people will manage the district honorably, transparently, and capably far into the future. Coming to the end of this, after nearly 50 years in public education, half a century, having had some 15,000 students in my various teaching assignments, not to mention the number of kids we've dealt with as trustees. Let me see if I can follow the arrows. I have a bit of old teacher insight to leave you with, and it is that comparing 1969, when I began teaching school, to this year, 2018, I want you to know that the good kids have never been better. And that unfortunately, as many of you know all too well, the bad kids have never been worse. But here's the deal, and it's good news. In 1969, I remember reading and experiencing time and time again, the good kids accounted for about 98% of our student enrollment, just about anywhere. And here in 2018, from what I've observed and what I know, nothing's changed. It's still 98%. So what I'd like to do is thank you. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to have some fun. give a guy a stand too? All right, thank you. Give me a hug. Made it.
Dave, I just, I don't know what to say. I heard this a few days ago. I've been upset, as you know, because we've been through a lot. But I understand you're moving out of your zone and you have to resign legally from the board. But you'll be greatly missed. And we've done a lot together. You've done a lot with all of us. And your voice as an educator has been a voice that, I don't have, my background experience is not in education. You give a perspective from having been in the classroom for all those years that is really helpful. So thank you very much for all you've done, and I look forward to continuing our friendship and occasional coffees and getting together. And thank you.
See you down at Bakery by the Lake.
And I may be hitting you up to deliver those shiny red apples next year. I've loved my time with you and our time doing that together, and also presenting the teacher awards. Those are some of our greatest things that we love to do in this job. There's difficult things, and then there's those things, and I've got to experience those with you. So thank you so much for all that you've taught me. And I know you don't answer your phone, but I will be blowing it up prior and having you put it on your calendar. So
Usually I can't find it.
I know. It
One
might be in
time
the
I found
lake.
it at the bottom of our pond.
Might be in the lake. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trustee Eubanks. I've really appreciated getting to know you and serving on the board here with you. I love how you keep everything so short and sweet. I'm going to miss that.
You are being facetious, right?
You shortchange yourself with that list there. There's a lot of wonderful accomplishments that you didn't mention while you were going through that list. So thank you for the last 5 years and the last 50 years. And we're not going to let you go for another 26 days. So thank you. And there's more work to be done over the next 26 days.
I know.
So we will move on. Okay. Back to our agenda here. So next up is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's amended consent agenda? Just for a refresher, we amended A and D.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say one thing. On the consent agenda is the school resource officer agreement with the City of Coeur d'Alene for the 2018-19 school year. I don't have a problem with the agreement, but I just want to make the point that we, as I've said before, I think if we can afford it, we need to hire more police officers. And we only have one officer, I believe, for all the elementary schools. Is that correct? And we need, what?
One for all the Coeur d'Alene elementaries.
Coeur d'Alene Elementary, excuse me. And I think we need more. And it's been a budget issue. And I hope we can continue to work on this problem and also negotiate with the City of Coeur d'Alene on this issue. I think it's important that we have more officers in the schools. And I kind of concur with what Mr. Twitchell was saying about some of the safety concerns. And others spoke to, there's a person in the audience spoke to that. So I just want to say, I will vote in favor of the consent agenda, but I want to make that point.
Thank you, Trustee Hearn. Any other comments? I just have one on the same topic. Maybe it's two. Just on that contract. I think when it was initially written, it was just revolved around the two high schools. And over the last half a dozen years, that program's evolved into, I believe we have 7 SROs, 6 with the City of Coeur d'Alene. And some of the language still revolves around high schools and doesn't recognize our middle schools and our elementary schools. So I'm not asking that we amend it tonight, but that someone work with the city to do that, because there's one spot it talks about high schools and middle schools, but doesn't talk about the elementary schools. Another spot it only talks about high school. So if you have questions on that, I can point that out to somebody, but I'd just like to see us work on that with the city so we're all on the same page. there's nothing further, let's go ahead and vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And we are into our information items. I see Katie Ebner's stepped up to the mic there. Ms. Ebner, you have our finance report tonight?
I do. Good evening, Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, Superintendent Olson. We'll get going here with our finance report. On the next slide, you will see this report's a little hard to read maybe from where you are, but one thing to note at the bottom, it mentions that fund balance is $6.5 million less than prior year. That's not something to be alarmed about. We accrued our summer payroll early this year, so employees that are on a 10-month contract, they are paid through the summer. However, we do want to record the expense in the current fiscal year. So we just did that in April versus May in prior year. So that's what that variance is there. On the next
Katie,
slide, yep.
Just while we're on that slide, is that why the bottom line, the year-to-date expenditures percentage is so much higher also then?
Exactly, yep.
Thank you.
And this is just a different view of our expenditures, and you'll see that we're kind of tracking closer to the percentage of time elapsed. That would be with the summer payroll accrued. We should be kind of aligning now with that time elapsed percentage. You may see that some line items are a bit over. We'll have to do some adjustments as the year end, as we get closer to year end. For example, exceptional child, that would be contracted services. And if you recall at the budget summit, we made the decision that we would code contracted services up to a certain point within, and then when they're over budget, we'll move those contracted services over to the Medicaid fund. Those transfers haven't occurred yet, so in the next couple months, the report will look more aligned. And on the next slide, we've just got some graphics here to show the information from the previous slide. And our next one, just another slide to show budget versus actuals. And next, so here's our enrollment report. You'll see that we're down 11 kids overall. That would be worrisome. However, this is the time of year that we generally are down in enrollment. Last May, we were down 22 students, so we're losing them at a lower rate than we are in prior years, so that's great news. And next slide. So normally, I think in my 5 years here, I've never had the chance to give good news. And Trustee Eubanks stole that, so no.
Oops, sorry.
That's just
It's
a joke.
great news.
I'll let you have that one. But so our deficit update. We, as we've gone through this spring, the district has reported a deficit, a projected deficit. And in the budget subcommittee meetings, we were down to $320,000. We had identified some federal forest fund money that was going to help the deficit. Since then, we received from the State Department of Ed our May funding report, and that had some really great news, which was surprising because normally we don't see an increase in funding from going from February to May. So on our next slide here, the State Department reported that we were going to, these are estimated numbers at this point, so you'll see that range, $400,000 to $500,000 increase in state funding for current year, which is really great news. That fills our deficit, and then it puts us in the position that we could potentially have a surplus when we end this year. So these funds were unanticipated when we made the initial settlement with the CEA through the IBB process. And when they were identified, we went back to the table and we addressed, what the budget looks like with this additional funding. So we as you will see if you come to our budget hearing, we're not anticipating a surplus of this size for our next year budget, but it's a nice surprise to have for this year, especially a year when we've had this deficit as a dark cloud over the district. So I think that's it. Oh, we've got key budget dates. So our budget hearing is June 18th here at the Midtown Center at 5 o'clock. And then a week later, we'll adopt the budget. So the budget hearing is when the board has a chance to take a look at what's in the budget, and then we usually wait a week and then we adopt. So any questions?
Seeing none, you're off the hook. Thank you. Okay, next up is our construction update. I see Mr. Martin approaching. Welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the board. I'd like to personally thank Mr. Olson and Dave. Thank you very much. You guys have been great. And there's a lot more stories out there too. Okay, here's some pictures to start with. This is Lake City High School. That project is going extremely well. It is, as you can see, that's the back of the side of the building. We're up about 8 tiers on that right now. Today, we probably have about another 3 or 4 tiers up. And that's the gym in the back. If you drive by the front of the school, they're actually up in doing the part of the building which is actually going to be the new classrooms. So the decking is going on, and they are moving through it. One of the things that you're going to hear out there, we've been getting phone calls, and that is the grass. We had to move the irrigation vault, which involved the city and the contractors and a lot of different people. Anyway, the water has been shut off for the irrigation. We think that we're going to have it on tomorrow. It will be probably a couple weeks before you start seeing any results. One of the things that people have been asking was, why can't you at least mow it? When you mow grass with this heavy equipment, when it's really brown like it is right now and dry, you really stress it, and you see stripes in it for months. It looks like when you mess up when you fertilize. So anyway, we've just left it alone. We're going to get the water on it, and it will look great. But anyway, that project has been just a great project. So if we could, there's Coeur d'Alene High School. And if you haven't seen the back end of the gym off yet, that's quite a sight to see, especially before they put the protective coatings on it. But what you're seeing there right now is that wood on the bottom. Those are the footing forms for the new expansion of the gym to have that as a performance gym. Show the next. That's the new front entryway that's going to be going into the commons, which is going to have concession stand on one side and bathrooms, and it's really going to be nice. It's going to give us some room inside the school. Right here is Dalton Elementary, and they're putting floors down right now. So all the slabs are down, and they're ready to go. And as soon as school is out, they'll also start into, this is the only project where we have a lot of work done inside of the building on the existing building. So, and that project is going very well also. Here's the Jewel. If you ever get a chance, you're going to see it. We're having a little bit of problem right now with Carl. He's the day custodian, and he refuses to let anybody in the gym. I think that he actually thinks it's going to look exactly like this for the next 25 years. It is absolutely beautiful. It is so nice. I was in there today, did the final walkthrough with the contractor and with Jeff Bingston, the principal, and it is absolutely beautiful. We're going to do a little bit of painting on the walls. We have the new bleachers coming in that will be installed by the time school opens up, and it is really something. It's just a beautiful floor. It's about time. So now the old fat guys can play on that gym too for Park and Rec. And there's lakes. We've already done all those pictures there. I was going to also think that you had some stuff up here for the finance part. Boy, I can hardly see that. Is that Dalton? Yeah. I'm going to just walk through it. Right now, all of our projects are doing very well. We're in great shape on all of them financially. As you can see, that's the blue. That's the money that we have out there. We have nothing that we're concerned about when it comes to the finance part on any of the projects. Dalton right there is looking great. Fernan, the contractor asked me here a couple months ago if he could get started, and I said, well, as long as you don't affect the school because it's still operational. I don't know if you've been by Fernan lately, but I think that they have half the project done right now. So it's going to be done quickly this summer. And that's going to be a great project, and that's right on. That's probably one of our tightest ones when it comes to the budget, but it looks good. It's going to be solid. Hayden Meadows, on this one you can see a little bit on that yellow part that's a little bit higher than the funds. We had a little bit of issue when we took up the old floor, and so there was some change orders that had to be made. But as you look to the right, that's where this whole thing plays into with contingency money. So we had to spend a little bit of contingency money to make it up. That project, I think, is like 15, well, it's probably more than that. It's probably about 18% under budget right now, and it's done. So we're in great shape there. CHS, we're in great shape over there. CHS, we've had a lot of issues when it came to underground. We found the original old 10,000-gallon septic tank, our luck. And so we had to remove it. We have had a lot of expenses on soil removing, compaction, testing. Then when we got that out, we found out all of the sewer lines coming out of that area weren't up to code because we were putting a building on top of it. So we had to repipe all of the sewer lines coming out of the 700 and 600 building. And we have hit everything under the sun on that project. The good news is that they're done playing in the dirt, and we're going up now. But we have had a potential of a lot of change orders there, but we're going to be just fine. The project's a great project. Lake City High School, like I say, Lake City High School is just a great job. You have to get a chance to come take a look at it. It really is turning out well, and they're really moving on it. And that's about it. Lakes, we're going forward more and more with some different things on getting that project done. And I think here by the end of the week, we'll have our stuff back from Megan, and we'll be able to move forward on some stuff. So it's doing well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Brian, we are now 4 days out from the graduation at Coeur d'Alene High School. How is the project there going to impact that graduation?
Well, we have a good team over there. They're going to be having different ways of getting in to the school, and it's going to impact it a little bit, but they're going to make it work. It's tough, but it's the only way we could do it and pull it off for their activities after, in the fall of the year. So it's looking good, though.
Good.
So,
any other?
Yeah, best case scenario, so if we get information back from Megan and then we go to the next phase, when do you think we could get good news on lakes?
Soon.
Okay.
I think that the game plan right now is as soon as Megan gives us the green light that we're going to put together our committee, we'll get our RFQs out, and we will do interviews, we'll get our contractors set up, and we will be going forward. And the word is out on the street. People have been calling, and they're interested, which is great. So I think it's going to be successful. I really do. So as we were sitting, it's kind of fun because when we were sitting in Lakes today with the gym, they have opaque block glass in certain places, And one of the things that came up is it wouldn't be nice to be able to pull that out and put it in just straight, clear glass into that gym. The whole gym looks just light now because of the new floor. So, dreams. So, anyway, but any other questions on the construction part? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
much. Thank you. And thank you again, Stan and Dave.
Okay, moving right along, we've got a number of policies for information tonight. Who's going first? Mike's got to get the mic working.
All right. We'll start maybe with policy 2377, animals in schools and classrooms. You may remember that this policy had a pretty major revision this winter. I think February is the date on there. That's when we were kind of pulling out some of the service animal statements and cleaning that up so that this is truly talking about animals, not service animals. ISBA had an opportunity to review the policy and made a few recommendations, so we've added those in their red line for your review.
Okay, so we'll just take these one by one. Any questions for Ms. Wilson on this one? Okay.
I don't have any questions other than the fact I like the fact that there was a statement here about if other students have allergic reactions to these animals, that'll be addressed. I was concerned about that when I first read it. That there wasn't that potential protection for other students.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just want to say I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Policy or procedures, for 3060, education of homeless children. Again, this policy seems to be undergoing quite a bit of just review and scrutiny, as well as a procedure, mainly from ISBA as a result of changes in the law related to ESSA. So again, just a quick review from ISBA and a few minor recommendations to the procedures part of 3060. Nothing there?
Doesn't look like it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Policy 3510 and relating procedure and forms, you can see had a pretty significant review by our lead nurse, Nicole Piekarski, who is here to answer really specific questions related to this particular policy change. But you can see after consulting with not only the State Department of Ed and the Idaho Board of Nursing, these changes were made to the policy. And again, I guess we'll just wait for questions, but if you have specific questions about procedures, maybe we could have Nicole step up to the podium to answer those.
Would it be possible just kind of give a little background, kind of an overview of the process? Because I'll tell you, as I read through it, I was like, wow, these are huge changes. Now, some of it's just rearranging it and simplifying it, I think, is kind of what I took out of it. But if you could just give us kind of a brief history and how we got there.
Yes, so the State Board of Nursing did make some changes to the rules of the board in the last few years, and then also we have had some legislative changes in regards to EpiPens and students carrying their own medications and utilizing medications for emergencies. So metered dose inhalers, as well as EpiPens, and then diabetes supplies. So looking at our medication policy and those changes, and being new in my position this year, we really did a fine-tooth combing, and I was left with a few questions. And so I contacted the State Board of Nursing as well as the State Department of Education. And while it does look like a major overhaul, there's a lot of red in there, I would say the noticeable change will be training for UAP, or unlicensed assistive personnel. So right now we have many folks in all of our schools assisting with medication administration. The Idaho School Board Association recommends in their policy that only a registered nurse give medications at school, and we do not have the resources for that. So another way to do that safely and appropriately for our students is to train people properly to administer medications. So that UAP training will be the new piece. And the other parts we felt were kind of clarifying and rearranging for better understanding.
Okay, well, thank you. It looked like a lot of work. Any questions for Nicole?
Are we keeping naloxone at our high schools, or is that just if we were to administer that medication?
We do not currently have that. That is one of the new state laws, that anyone can administer the medication if indeed they believe a person has an opioid overdose without liability. We are working with our SROs to To address that, we do not have stock in our schools, and we currently don't have that practice for our school nurses or other staff.
It might be something, in the future that we look into. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wilson, is that next one you as well? Immunization requirements? No? Is that you, Nicole? I think that was just a minor change that was legislative driven, that a parent no longer needed to use a specific form for opt-out.
Correct. The law did not change, and understanding of the law did change, and that we can provide a written note from a parent that they needn't fill out our exact form to provide us that information.
Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next up is 7400, which is a purchasing, I think a 7407. Are those intertwined a little bit?
Yeah, I wasn't, I didn't edit those policies, but I believe the only change is raising the limit for a purchase from $25,000 to $50,000 before needing board approval. The reasons mentioned, it was brought up mostly by Brian Martin with these bond projects. He's running into issues where we could hold up, you may need to get one piece of the project done before you can move on, and waiting for the next regular board meeting may not be possible. And so 50,000 is in line with Idaho code. So we were thinking it may be the time to change it in policy for board approval.
That's what I noticed when I read the policy, was it is in alignment with Idaho code, and that's just to me, it makes sense that we would do that at this point.
The one thing we discussed in agenda planning last week, I guess it was, when we talked about this policy just on a preview basis with Tom and I and the cabinet folks, was along with putting that language change in there, was just putting something that on contracts between $25,000 and $49,999, that the board would be notified. So it wouldn't take board approval, but there'd be board notification just as we transition to this, and then maybe we see, we don't need to do that in the future, but just as kind of an intermediary step.
We can work on that.
So I would like to see that in there if we're making this change. Thank you. Any other questions on that? It's your last chance, Mr. Eubanks. Okay.
Those policies so much.
All right, we're done with information items, and we are into our action items. And first up, item D is the ratification of the 2018-19 negotiated agreement. Dr. Cottle, are you providing any background on this, or before it goes to the board?
Is it coming? Patience. Well, I would just like to share that it's been a wonderful process. This is the first year that we used interest-based bargaining, and it's a very different process. What it means is both teams sit down together and we talk about different problems that are in the district, and we actually problem solve and come up with what we call solutions. So instead of proposals and counter proposals, we work together and come up with some solutions. So in this tentative agreement, you will see language. Some of the language is updating our negotiations process to include some language so that way we're talking the same language when it comes to interest-based bargaining. There is some language in here to address the substitute shortage, which includes increasing all substitute rates by $5, offering a $100 incentive bonus for substitutes that work more than 16 days a month. It also includes an increase in pay for colleagues covering colleagues from $14 an hour to $37 an hour, which is the average teacher hourly rate. You will also see language in here recognizing an additional year on salary matrix placement for new to the district experienced teachers. We also put into some language guaranteeing 225 minutes of preparation time per 5-day work week for elementary teachers and specialists. And we also allocated some additional resources to offset the workload to librarians. Librarians are crucial to our assistance of providing elementary planning time. The salary and benefits package includes keeping insurance whole. There was a 3.2 increase to our benefits, and we will cover that. We will also award steps and lanes. There is a 1.5% raise for all certificated staff. It is not included in language, but we agreed upon a 1.75% raise for all classified staff. We did include some language to increase the base for high school co-curricular stipends. And there's also contingency language for each unit increase over the projected amount of 513 units. So for example, for each unit increase, certified teachers and pupil personnel services staff will receive an additional 0.1%. So if we are up 1 unit, they'll get a 0.1% increase on top of the 1.5. If they're up 2, it'd be 0.2% increase, and so on. Again, we were very pleased. This is the first year since I've been lead that we've been able to bring this to you prior to the end of the school year. And it's also one of the first years that we've been able to offer and settle on some items beyond just salary and benefits. And so we're very excited about this package. So I'll entertain any questions.
Well, I did want to say that I heard the concerns of the classified staff. Dr. Olson talked about those. You know, and I've said publicly at one of the IBB meetings that I thought classified staff pay is too low and in fact even embarrassing, and that many people of these staff members, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, secretaries are just working for benefits and for retirement. They're not, their salary is so low. So I've felt this should be a priority for some time. I'm glad we're addressing this issue. I know that Mr. Eubanks and I have talked about this, and others have talked about this. So it's, you know, I hear the classified staff's concerns. They're legitimate, and I know there's been some talk in the legislature. Maybe Dr. Olson knows about this, but about some additional funding for classified staff. But of course, things don't get very far sometimes in the legislature when they're talking about money. But that is something that has been discussed, because a lot of school districts around the state are complaining about not adequate funds for the classified staff and are losing them. So, and I just want to say that I hear you, and I'm committed, as long as I'm on this board, to continue to work on this issue. But thank you.
Any other questions and comments before we take up a motion? I'll just echo what Trustee Hearn said and Dr. Olson earlier, in that this was my 3rd year, I think, of being on the negotiations team. And it was by far the most interesting. We covered the most ground. There wasn't a lot of time spent butting heads or disagreeing. Really, it was working together to find solutions. And I wouldn't say it was fun, but it was better. And I think we came up with a better solution. I also hear our classified folks that they're concerned, and I think we all are. Is one of the first things we talked about when we met together in our first interest-based bargaining session was just how things have changed. One, we're dealing with a smoking hot economy right now with, you know, unemployment we've never seen. 2, we've got Washington next door to us that's been raising minimum wage, and it's $4 or $5 higher than what it is in Idaho now. And these positions have gotten hard to fill, and they're absolutely critical to the operation of our district. We need to fill these positions. We need to reward our employees. And so I appreciate that we handle that early. We talked about that early. I appreciate that CEA recognized that. And, you know, I don't know who came with the idea, but that we gave the classified folks more up front. So I know there's work to do. I look forward to the compensation and classification study. You know, I'm sure CEA does, and I know those classified folks do as well, and it'll be important to have them involved in that. And it'll be interesting to see what we get out of that. So,
do we have any information showing how many of our classified employees' families are living on food stamps? We do not. Certificated? Okay. Just saying. Just asking.
I just want to thank all that was involved in coming to the table to do this together. It really shows what a positive impact it is when people actually come together and communicate and work out hard problems that they're both, you know, very passionate about, and it all comes back to our students and our teachers and our staff. So thank you so much. What a great example that is to everyone, just to come to the table and talk it out.
just the other thing I wanted to point out, and I know we often don't talk about steps and lanes, especially when we're talking about classified folks, but Kelly pulled just some quick numbers for me because I was curious. And of the 673 staff members we have, about 490 of those folks will also be moving up a ladder on their experience. So not only will they gain another year and move up with pay associated with that, but also that whole matrix goes up by 1.75%. I think that's a little higher percentage than we'd see looking at our certified, but kind of two gains there for those folks, and we know we have work to do. So, okay, if there's no further questions or comments, the motion got left out of the packet, but Ms. Town wrote it down here for me. So is there a motion to ratify the 2018-19 negotiated agreement as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries, Ms. Town. All right. Next up is Dr. Orozco, and she's making her way around to the podium here. Item E is going to be our full-day kindergarten pilot discussion for the 2018-19 school year.
Good evening. Trustees, in your board packet, you received a kind of a Reader's Digest condensed version of our longer conversation that we'd had earlier in a workshop meeting. From those conversations, I think that we sort of landed on a plan that would maybe offer an opportunity to pilot a program in both Meadows and Sorensen and give us some information. I thought that what you heard this evening from Ben and Chris and Jen and Rachel, I thought that was good information from that parent and family perspective about what our hopes are for our children. Although we've talked about this, I think it bears saying once again. I'm thinking back to Mr. Twitchell's jeers statements about what we're able to do in local communities when our state funds half-day programs. And we know that you don't have to go very far to find states that fund full-day programs. When we do the math and we add a half a section to a half-day kindergarten program, that results, by the time you add that salaries and benefits and you add the paraprofessionals who support those classrooms and that sort of thing, that adds about $52,000 for one classroom. That's, of course, our problem. So prior to my tenure here in the district about 8 years ago, and we've talked about this probably about 8 years ago, our school board considered full-day tuition-based kindergarten and decided that at that time, my understanding, and some of you who've been here could correct me, but my understanding from what I've heard from the history lesson I've been given was that the board did not like that idea because they were, in fact, concerned about equity. They wanted children from families who were struggling. They wanted all kids to have that experience, and they wrestled with how might we do that. Years later, 2015, I think it was decided that we would have full-day programs in our 4 southern schools, we call them Bryan, Bora, Winton, and Fernan. And the reason for that is that that's where a tremendous amount of title resources resided. So we could use those title funds to help pay for those all-day kindergarten programs, along with additional levy dollars. And so we've had some conversation about what about our other schools where families desperately want a full-day experience for their children, where we see great need, where teachers have been saying for a number of years, for this little pumpkin and this one, we don't have enough time in the day in a half-day program to give them the literacy and math in particular, to give them those learning experiences that they need. So I don't think this pilot is about whether or not we all should figure out that we indeed need academic research to support the claim that all-day kindergarten is a good thing. Probably everybody in the room might say all-day kindergarten is a good thing. What we have at Meadows and at Sorensen is something very rare in our district, and that is space. We have a classroom in each. And the Sorensen parents acted judiciously when they knew that that 6th grade classroom would be available now. And Meadows also has a classroom space that's available. What we believe, I think what we're hoping for, and I think that was in your packet, is we're hoping to gather some information from those 2 classrooms this year about, let's be sure about student achievement. We know what the research says, and we're certain even from our own district that it improves with all-day programs. Let's talk about the feedback from the families, from tuition-paying families. We could find out a lot of information from them over the course of this year. Are they getting their money's worth of education from us? I think it would buy us some time to talk about space. We all kind of keep thinking we're stuffing kids in closets, it feels like sometimes now. And until we have those schools built, we're going to continue to struggle. But we might have some time to think about space in our other schools. And I think just the financial implications altogether. I mean, we sort of know, and we've worked hard with our finance department and that committee, but it'll be interesting to see if our numbers play out the way we suspect in terms of the cost of that extra half day. So I think there's a lot of information that we could gain from these 2 schools. I support the program. My understanding from listening to you, you 5 people sort of wrestle with this. My understanding is that you do share some concern about little ones who need that full day program and come from a family that can't afford, quite frankly, any tuition, or that little one that we're into October and the other kindergarten teacher next door in the half day program says, we've got to do something for this little one. Those are the sorts of we said five spaces maybe in that in our proposal, and those are kind of what we're hoping for, is that we could throw a life raft to a teacher and a little one who might need that full day program by reserving those 5 spaces. So I think that's sort of an illustration of the proposal, and I'm sure willing to take questions, and not sure I can answer them, but I'll give it a shot.
So let's go ahead with questions here first, board. And
I just, when I came on the board in 2013, I remember a couple of months after being on the board, Dave Eubanks and I we used to go around schools together. We went to Bora and talked to the kindergarten teacher there, and she was talking about how much should be helpful to her kids to have full-day kindergarten there. So we pushed for that. It's now in 4 schools. The point I'm trying to make is it should be district-wide, and this is a political thing that drives me nuts. And people know I'm not going to get partisan here, but the legislature has talked about this repeatedly, about funding all-day kindergarten. It was, the half-day was only funded in 1994, I believe it was, when Governor Andrus was governor. And they've been pushing it ever since to have full-day kindergarten and can't seem to get it through the legislature. So it's fallen, just sort of for people to realize, it's falling on the local school district to do this. And we've done it with 4 schools. I'd like to see us do it with all the schools. And it needs to be done. And some of the questions have been asked, well, why do you have it free at 4 schools and when you're going to have partially paid at 2 more schools? And it's just the reality of how it's structured financially, and you have a group of dedicated Sorensen parents that step forward and ask for this. So I guess I don't know if I have a question as much as that was in my editorial comments about my frustrations on this issue. There's such an obvious need, and we struggle in our budget to make this happen. I want to next year push again to see if we can continue to expand this to other schools. Hopefully we'll get some help from the legislature. I'm not holding my breath on that one, but I hopefully we will. So I think that your final proposal here came up with, I think, how much was it?
$323.
$323 for the paid children, families, and then there was that left 5 slots.
5
that
slots.
were scholarship slots.
Correct.
I guess I wish we could do better on the scholarship slots, but I'm not sure how to do that. I know Mr. Eubanks has mentioned that issue, right, Dave?
Yeah.
But I guess I'm saying I'm going to be supportive of the Sorensen and Hayden Meadows parents and what they're wanting to do this, and I'm going to be supportive of it. I just think we also need to look at a larger issue about why this isn't funded in Idaho, and there's one more thing I'll say, and then I'll get off my high horse here. There's been a push to have preschool funding in Idaho, as was stated by one of the speakers here. Many states have that, but the legislature has, what I've heard most currently, and I try to stay in touch with this stuff in Boise, is they've said, well, I don't know if we'll do this preschool stuff. This sounds like a little, that's kind of expensive, blah, blah, blah. But maybe we can consider all-day kindergarten. So next legislative session, or maybe for the candidates who are running for the legislature, you might want to ask them that question. What is their support of this? And next legislative session, we need to be pushing our legislators to at least fund all-day kindergarten, because they're not going to go there on the preschool anytime soon. But anyway, so I'm enough said on that. I'm supportive of what you're doing and your great work, and I know you've been playing with the numbers and the numbers of kids, numbers, how we can afford this, et cetera. I wish we could afford more, but thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hearn. I'm hopeful that a new sort of ad hoc early childhood committee will be able to do some studying this year, not just all-day kindergarten, but also, some preschool work, and there's a variety of things that I think need some consideration. So maybe you can rent a bus and put them on it, and we'll go to Boise or something.
Okay.
Mr. Eubanks.
I hope this isn't political. I don't mean it to be political, but if the legislature in Boise would put a cap on the tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires.
No, that's not political at all.
The world. This is not political, is it? No. Okay. Then we could have all-day kindergarten and we could have preschool education. We wouldn't have to go through these nightmare belt-tightening issues that we have to deal with always. It's been the one overriding frustration of being on this board for 5 years. It's exactly what Bruce pointed to, the legislature, the state, okay? I have wrestled with this issue of all-day kindergarten. I've supported it from the very beginning. In fact, if you saw any of my campaign posters 5 years ago, one of the things I had on it was all-day kindergarten. But as you just mentioned there, space is the problem. I'm hoping that in time, getting more land out on the prairie, getting more schools built, getting rid of the portables, and getting more space that will just percolate through the whole district, we will be able to do this. It is needed and it should be done. I have a problem with the equity thing, and I've already spoken to that time and again. But at this point in time, I'm thinking, let's give this a try and just see how it goes for 1 year. I'd sure like to see that 18-5 ratio better balanced. The fiscal side of it be darned. But apparently, if that's not possible at this time, I'm a yes on this, just for the pilot. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm supportive of this as well, and sadly, in the state of Idaho, kindergarten isn't even required. So first off, we've got to start with that. That's just mind-boggling that we're in 2018 and it's not even required to go to kindergarten. So we got to start with that. And what a perfect night for your jeers for the state of Idaho legislature. So thank you for that. And I'm excited to see what the pilot will show. And I don't think anyone up here doesn't want all-day kindergarten for everyone. And in fact, if we had this space, I would push for pre-K as well inside the schools where we came from before we moved. My oldest is graduating. She started kindergarten up here, but they had pre-K in a couple of their school systems, and we paid for it. We were able to gladly, but then it just gets them through the flow of the district and whatnot. So anyways, we have a ways to go, but I think that this is a start, and thank you guys for all your work on this.
I have some more logistical questions for you, but first, I think everybody up here agrees that 28 states have been providing all-day kindergarten since 2016, whether it's free or with a fee, and I think it's time that we join those ranks. How we decide to do that, I think, is difficult, and you've raised some of the concerns. I think my biggest concern tonight is the fee. You know, I think we had mentioned at our workshop that the fee be in the $200 ballpark. I'm worried that if we can't add more scholarship spots, which I'm not sure that we can do with this model, that enabling a fee that allows most students to participate would be really important to me. And I think, you know, $250, $275, Katie, I know you've run those numbers, but we talked about how we're ending our fiscal year. There might be a little bit of money that we could assist. You know, I just think, yeah, no, go ahead.
I thought that was fun. One thing I just want to remind you is that ending the year with a surplus is not something that will be in the plans as an ongoing surplus. So with the ratified agreement, that would kind of take up those additional revenues.
I recognize that, but this is just a one-year protocol. So with that being in mind, you know, 1 year, one time.
Using the one-time money.
One-time monies, knowing that it's not. I mean, I think everybody up here recognizes this model, in my opinion, is not a sustainable model to provide all-day kindergarten. And I would like to see our district next year, through the use of an ad hoc committee, explore better options to have access for all students in our district. But beyond that, we can talk about the fee and maybe what we could do and what would be possible. But logistically, I had some questions. One would be at Hayden Meadows, that classroom would be in the facility, or would it be a portable classroom?
No, I don't know that for sure. Lisa and I have talked about that, and I think that they would make some adjustments because you want your kindergartners close and inside the building, and you want them close to bathrooms, all kinds of good things like that.
My next question would be, at our other schools where we're providing all-day kindergarten, all classes are receiving all-day kindergarten. So this would be the first time where we have a school where one class of students would not be receiving all-day kindergarten. So I would want to do a little exploration and thought process into, are we creating a disparity amongst a cohort of students? So we have 2 classrooms, for instance, at Sorensen. One classroom's getting all-day kindergarten and one will not. You know, we haven't really talked about that aspect, but a couple teachers mentioned it to me, and I thought it was just something to think about as first grade starts. And you'll definitely have some students, by some of the data that we've seen at other schools, that will be ready to move at a different pace. And how do we accommodate blending then those classes in the future would be something.
I think that's a good question, and I know we have a kindergarten summit coming up in a few weeks, and we're trying really hard to sort of blend our all-day kindergarten teachers with our half-day kindergarten teachers, because we're discovering that when we come together, their lives really are very different, and how they reach out to students and address their needs, or academic especially, are very different. So the more we can figure that out together until that day when when our state funds all-day kindergarten, it'll be a good thing. I agree with you.
My last question, so the hours for all-day kindergarten would be the normal school hours at that school, so Hayden Meadows would follow their normal bell schedule, the same for Sorensen, is that kind of?
Yeah, correct, correct.
And I guess in that thought process, so this will be the first time that we have a fee, and if it ends up being the $300 fee, that's a fee on par with a private caliber kindergarten. Will our product be the same that we're providing in our fee kindergarten as we're providing in our other schools? You know, we hadn't talked about that also, and I've had some parents mention that to me. So will it be the exact same curriculum, or will it be different for two schools that are trying it for fee?
I think depending on what the board decides tonight, we'll do some connecting with the teachers who are at each of those schools that are going to teach full day K with some of their colleagues, and I imagine they're the kind of folks that'll reach out anyway, but to connect with them and say, okay, how do you expand those learning activities over a full day? When you have the luxury of spending more time with literacy, for example, what does that look like? All of those discussions will have to happen.
And I guess my reason for that comment is that I do feel uncomfortable with the thought process that we would provide a better service for a fee. So I wanted to ensure that there wouldn't be a thought process that because someone's paying for all-day kindergarten, they're getting a different product. I think when we move to all-day kindergarten for all students, it must be consistent across the board, and the same expectation is for every school.
I think I'm finally understanding your question. And you've had some time to spend in classrooms in our schools. You know what's happening in our full day kindergarten classrooms right now, and we have folks who are working really, really hard to provide a powerful learning experience. And we've done kindergarten labs, we've done teaching labs, we've had a chance to see some outstanding classrooms in another district close by. And I feel as though all day K in any of the schools currently, these possible 2 full day classrooms, as well as our half day programs, it's hard to find better teaching and learning than you see in our kindergarten classrooms across the board.
My last comment. I heard you mention a couple times about an ad hoc committee for early education. Is that something that we could make a board-directed committee so we could actually get community involvement and we could advertise it and see if we could get the community members involved in this conversation? Because I think it might help even lobbying, in Boise, if we had a group that came together supporting pre-K, K, and we involved our community, it could be really beneficial.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily that it needs a board directive to have that community involvement. We need it anyway. I will say this, that Dr. Cook and I have had some early discussions about an early childhood ad hoc committee, and I think it would be nice to get his thinking about that. I think I might be putting words in his mouth. I got the sense that they've done that very thing in Douglas County. So it'll be good to see what he has to say about that and see if he might have some direction for us to go with that.
Perfect. Well, thank you for all of your effort.
Thank you. Mr. Morrisroe, may I step down?
No, I have a couple questions for you. I didn't get to go yet. So I guess I have a question first, which is more about the process. And I know we've seen, at least my understanding, I think from Sorensen, it's pretty high demand from it. I think the messaging's maybe been a little different at Hayden Meadows, so people are kind of waiting more to see what's happening than coming in saying, put me on the list. That's my understanding anyhow. So my question's more, are we going to set kind of a firm deadline? My concern is we approve this tonight and 16 families at Sorensen say, great, we're going to have all-day kindergarten. And we get to the first day of school and we have 16 people signed up and we say, we can't afford this. And we're calling those people and saying, sorry, we're not going to do this. That's my concern, because that's my expectation. If we don't get the numbers, we're not doing it. And so I'm just wondering, in our timeline here, do we need to have that? Okay, if by August 20th we don't have the commitments for the seats, we're not going to do this program. And I realize once we start it, we've funded it for the year.
Right.
And we may start the year with 23, and 2 months in, we might only have 18. And that's a risk we're taking a little bit. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I guess that's my concern, is I feel like we need kind of that date. And then my other question would be, if you get the numbers at one school but you don't get them at the other, are you doing the one school and not the other?
Good questions. I think, but that there's a difference between a deadline where we see if we have enough interest or not, and then you mentioned people who say that they're interested, but then at the end sort of back out and say, "Ugh, things got tight for our family," right? I know that what we noticed from our colleagues south of us in Boise, I think we're West Ada. I noticed that they actually filled out applications. Families filled out applications. So those families who were interested, we'd ask them to fill out an application. One of the other things when we did our research was, and I think I mentioned it in the proposal, was that we use a withdrawal. What do you call that? A withdrawal. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Automatic
Auto
withdrawal.
payment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything that has to do with so that would be a part of that application process. I wondered about a firm deadline, and I think we played around with maybe mid-June, and Lisa said she feels like she'll need that June month to make sure that she's got the families, but she feels very confident, and in fact, I think what she feels like is the Nexa community as well as the Meadows community would easily produce the number of necessary families who would be interested in the program. She feels pretty good about that. I worry a little bit about a hard, fast deadline, just because I'm recalling the conversation I had with Lisa on the phone about that, about wanting to give her the time necessary. We all know it's tricky because also our staffing decisions depend on this, and it would make sense to me that if we had full commitment at one community, that we would certainly go ahead regardless of the other community. That would seem to make sense to me. And so what I'm saying, Mr. Morris-Rose, I'm not certain about a deadline. I think if there were one, it would be, I think that Lisa would say at least till the end of June. We can always ask her and we can firm up that deadline. I can talk with Brett, who's here, and with Lisa, and we can firm up a deadline even down the road and say this is what we'll set. Because I'm looking at HR over here too, and we've got to figure out that staffing information as well.
Yeah, I guess my concern, and I know it's going to be a lot of logistics on our part, I'm more concerned about the heartburn we could cause if for some reason we can't pull it off. And all of a sudden it's, like I said, September, and we're telling folks, sorry, we can't do this. And now they're scrambling either to find an alternative program or, okay, I work all day and Johnny's just going to be in half day. What am I doing with the rest of the half day? And so I don't want us to get to September and shock 23 families.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'm trying to build in some safeguards so we're doing this ahead of time, and we're communicating that now. Okay, we as a district are committing to this as long as we have the numbers on whatever it is. And I don't really care personally what that date is, as long as there's some notice there, a couple weeks before school, some sort of gap. I realize Lisa Peak at Hayden Meadows needs to kind of recruit those 23 families in, but
right. And like I said, I think she feels good about doing that. I know that even when Brett and I talked with Sarah and Jennifer, one of the things we talked about is that figuring out daycare and figuring out all that stuff for your family, that happens like a month ago. For many families, they were putting deposits down. This is no little issue for families, and your concern, we match that concern. I think, and it's tricky, and it's this time of year, and it would have been a great thing to have done this 3 months ago, right? But I think if there were any such thing as a confidence meter about the confidence from our administrators and those sitting on that committee, I think there's tremendous confidence that we can make it happen. And if it were up to me, I'd just say we're going to do this in these two pilot classrooms, and we will find a way. I've spoken with other northern school principals, namely Heather Summers at Atlas, and she feels also like she has families who would be very willing to drive their little ones to a place where they could have full day K. I think we have family interest. It would be nice if it were right there in Meadows, Nexa, but I think we won't have a problem filling those slots.
Could I just ask one thing here? Will we maintain a waiting list?
Yes.
I mean, if we have 50 people waiting to get in, we shouldn't have to worry about coming up short.
Sorensen is experts at waiting lists, aren't you?
I think, as we're rolling this out, if it gets board approval tonight, that communicating that out. I also think a little fact sheet, maybe addressing some of the questions that Ms. Van Hill had. Just what does the state fund? How many people even in this room would know that the state only funds half-day kindergarten?
Right. I agree with you. And
just tackling some of those. Okay, what's it fund? What's the money used for? What's the program going to look like? How do I pay for it? Just tackle. And I know we've covered a lot of ground in the last 45 or 60 days, but I think that's going to be just key to, especially phones are going to shut off at those buildings here in a few weeks as those offices close. We need to be kind of on top of that stuff and have those answers. So if we could have a fact sheet, that'll really help.
You bet. We've begged, borrowed, and we've stolen. Frequently asked question sheets, application sheets, funding sheets. We've begun to create a series of Google Docs, and in fact, I think our hope from our principals was that we'd have those applications ready to go tomorrow morning, depending on what the board decided tonight. And I'm in agreement with you that our community's got to have that information immediately.
Is there, I don't know if the board has any appetite to talk about taking $50 off the fee and getting into a $275 range? I think that will provide more access. $50 a month for a family is a big difference. So Katie, I know you're quick at your numbers sometimes. Can we see what that looked like?
I know that if we took 70 off, in those tables, if we made it $250 for those families, it would be, I think we figured out it would cost the district approximately $15,000, and our numbers lady will confirm that, but that was in one of the tables that I think.
Oh, how much total did you say, 15?
Yeah, and now the way you're looking at me, I'm thinking maybe I should be quiet and see what she has to say.
Because that seems like a pretty good deal.
I think that was the one for the 3.
For the, $275.
Yeah. Well, Katie.
So, it looks like 18 students at $275 for 9 months would be a cost to the district of about $8,000.
Per classroom.
I think the access.
Per classroom, yes.
Right,
Yeah,
so it
still,
was about 15, I think.
I think access for students at the $250 range is immensely different than, in the 300 range. It's, it's groceries, it's gas, it's.
I would support what Lisa May is saying. We lower the fee and the district have some money in the game. We do, of course, we'll have a lot of it, but that we pay additional to reduce the fee to the families. I don't know what other people think.
With your permission, I'll sit down and let you wrestle with that a minute.
I do want to just bring up the fact that if this is a pilot and, we're hoping to extend it to across the district, that would be a pretty significant impact. So I don't know how that would work as far as fitting into the budget district-wide. So I just want to make that known.
But if we look at this being only a pilot next year, we have 4 schools where we're paying for all students. So our fee structure will be immensely different next year. True. So this will be a one-time expenditure for this year.
Correct. Yeah. But if it's piloting to hopefully get to a structure that we would want to expand throughout the district, I guess you probably repeated what I'm trying to say is this would be a temporary.
Temporary.
Yes. Yeah. I don't see this fitting easily into the budget being an expanded program.
I've got I guess this is not a question, but just an editorial comment. And it just reflects a couple things I heard tonight. One was from Darby and one was from Chris. So, and I think what Darby talked about is what we're talking about here a little bit in that, for those folks who don't qualify for free and reduced lunch and they're just over they're getting by, but it's tight, they're paycheck to paycheck. That $323 it's just out of the question for those people. And $250 might be too. I know Lisa's talked about sliding scale and, those are all things to work on. But my concern is this year, are we are we taking care of the haves and the have-nots? And the kind of have-its are left out. You know, they're not in the game. And so that's my one concern. The other thing I heard Chris say, Mr. Meyer, there was, if you wait for the perfect plan, you're going to pass a good one or something. He said it much better than I could, but something to that effect. And so, you know, I came in here not sure where I stood tonight on this. And I support all-day kindergarten. I have concerns with the way we deliver it because it's not very equitable. We have, you know, different models at different schools. And now we're just going to have one more model. So now we're going to have 3 different ways we do kindergarten. So, you know, that's my concern. So as we move forward, I want to find something that's more equitable, that's spread across our district. You know, the fact of the matter is, if the state gave us $1 million today and said, here you go, you have all-day kindergarten now, we don't have the room for it. So, you know, the money's not going to, I mean, the money's going to help, but we'd still be struggling big time with it. So I think we need to look kind of long-term, and what do we want this to look like long-term, and how can we make it more equitable than what we're doing right now? So I guess I've changed my position or come around that. I'm supportive of this. I agree. I'd like to see the fee a little lower, and I would support, you know, throwing some money in out of that one-time kind of savings and knowing that it probably doesn't work long-term. Just why we pilot this and see, okay, does this work? Can we collect money? Are people willing to pay money? You know, all those questions that we have right now.
And communicate that along the way. So if it doesn't work out and we want to expand long-term and we'd have to go up, that's one time communicated. Like we're trying this fee, you know, as long as I feel like we're putting it out there. Yeah, I agree. Lower.
Okay. Dave, do you have a comment here, or are we ready to?
Make a motion?
I don't know, and I've done this every time we've had this conversation. I'm just concerned about the perception of this in some quarters of the public. It looks elitist to an extent. You know, the district may be putting an X amount of dollars in to support this and getting 5 kids out of maybe 23 in there. I'm uncomfortable with this, but I'm willing to give it a try. Let's just see how it plays out. And I agree with Chris as well that if we wait for perfection, we're going to miss all kinds of opportunities. Mm-hmm. That was a very good line, Chris.
Yes.
But it does.
It was.
Oh, okay. Well, it does help. Okay. So I'm still good. Not totally happy, but good.
All right. Is there a motion?
Yeah,
on
I'll
this?
make the motion. I guess I would like to say, Kate, maybe we can adjust the fee a little bit if we can, and I think you heard that, and we'll kick some money in the district. But anyway, nevertheless, I don't think that has to be included in the motion. So the motion is to approve a proposal to pilot 2 full-day tuition-based kindergarten classrooms at Sorensen and Hayden Meadows Elementary Schools for the 2018-19 school years as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded.
I have a clarifying question here.
Mike.
As presented.
I don't think the fee is in here. I was just.
It is in the proposal.
Oh,
there.
it is.
Yes.
It is $323, correct?
I know I read that, but I didn't know if it was in the motion.
So-
Okay.
You've talked about 2 things here. You've talked about a $250 fee, and you've talked about 2 things, a $250 fee or a $300 and whatever it was fee. I think you need to strike a line here and commit so that we have clear direction for our people to move ahead and get this thing done.
So it says 323, but 270 has been thrown out.
275 is the amount that for the 18 paid
Oh, yeah.
students with cost to the district of about 15,000.
15,000. Okay.
So I could change the motion that is what I said, but at a cost of $275 per paid student. Is that how you say it? Is that right? Sound decent, Lynn? You're the one that makes.
So you want to amend your motion?
Amend my motion to approve, okay, I'll say it again. Motion to approve a proposal to pilot 2 full-day tuition-based kindergarten classrooms at Sorensen and Hayden Meadows Elementary School for the 2018-19 school year.
The amended fee.
At a cost not to exceed $275 per paid student. Does that sound? Does that sound?
Yes, thank you.
And how many scholarship kids will that include? 5?
Five.
I'll second that again.
It's still the same amount of scholarship kids. It's just that we're just reducing the fee to the people who are paying.
Okay, so the motion's been amended. It's been presented and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amended motion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Apparently, they didn't like that.
Okay, Dr. Nelson, you've scared them off again.
Wait, the good stuff's just happening. All right. Board Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, and members of the board, it's time to take a look at the recommendation that is in front of you tonight for some new curricular and assessment items for the coming school year. The first item in your consideration is for our new texts and materials to support English language arts instruction. This is the first time that we can talk to you about this since 2003, and the first time that we've had a chance to really vision what language arts could and should look like in our district, especially at the secondary levels. With your blessing, we'll be starting the work in elementary K-5 for this coming school year. And again, I would like to certainly thank the voters who have given us the opportunity to be able to do this, because a jeer again to the state of Idaho that, well, we don't receive money for curricular materials. This is something at our own benevolence to make sure that our students can achieve the standards that the state has set. The very first activity that we did in this process was get content teams together to be able to say, what do we want? We had a list of essentials and desirables that ranged everything from new materials to support writing in our district, which are certainly needed, engaging lessons, flexibility, online components, ease of use, scaffolded instruction, materials aligned to standards, believe it or not, all of those pieces. At that point, then, we reviewed about 170 materials that came from our country and from other countries as well to really try to find out where that was following the district's policies and adoption tools. We've piloted for the last 6 months. We've had the opportunity to review in front of an ad hoc committee of peers and colleagues from this community, and ultimately we've identified some finalists for you. Tonight, we ask for your blessing after a 30-day public review, of which anybody had the chance to be able to stop by our district office and give their feedback, to grades 6, 7, 8 with StudySync, a title from McGraw-Hill that fits most of those boxes very, very nicely. At the 9th through 12th level, you may remember that we presented you kind of a split vote. The ad hoc community advisory panel was marginally in favor of collections from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. However, the administration and the content committee, the teachers themselves, settled on Pearson, their My Perspective series. We received no public comments for grades 6, 7, and 8. However, we did receive 3 public comments for the high school version of the consideration this evening. 2 of them were faculty within the district who promoted the use of My Perspectives over collections. And the third comes from Mrs. Smith, a professor of English at Gonzaga University, who really presents a very different approach for how we should be teaching, in her consideration, language arts in our district. There are certainly some things that are pie in the sky, and there are some things that are very practical in those considerations. But the nice thing is that ultimately, she said, whichever way that the board ends up going, that it will be a step in the right direction. Although, again, I think there are some things that we can address during curriculum writing coming up in this next year and implementation of the time. So we'll leave it up to you at this point. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, but again, the recommendation from our administration would be StudySync at grade 6 and My Perspectives at grades 9 through 12.
I had a basic question just about English language arts. So the text had small vignettes of books per se. So they're still assigned a reading list for that year that includes novels in their entirety. Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, both collections, and I'm assuming you're referring more at the high school level.
Yes.
Both collections and My Perspectives does have full-length texts embedded in. Romeo and Juliet, Frankenstein are in there. But if you look at the complexity of the standards, one of the things that we struggle with in our district is exposing students to a wide variety of authors and genres and times. So the way that most of these publishers have gotten around that is by providing excerpts, getting students engaged with an author or a style that they may not be used to. But by no means are we going to say we're not going to do full-length reads. We still have an adopted novel list, and we still will be doing that along the time. However, I do believe in deference to what Mrs. Smith is saying. I do think that this is going to give us greater opportunity to get our kids in our libraries and get onto our online books and expose them a lot more than just doing a full-length read where the teacher is in control of everything that's going on. Having more text and more flexibility for students would be great. It's not aligned to our current board policies. Right now, everything has to be gone through this very rigid adoption process. And that's something that we can work with along the way.
Well, I was just going to say, I was very impressed by, you and I have talked about this a little bit, Rebecca Smith's letter. And, she does have a PhD in English and literature from the University of Michigan, so she's a smart lady. She may not know the core issue, the Common Core issues. She may not know board policy, but she certainly knows English language issues here. So I just hopefully we can, and the third page of her memo asks some very interesting questions. I think we need to address as a district. So I'm just saying that I support your plan, but I would like us to maybe take a look at whether it's an ad hoc committee or it's however we do it, some of the questions she's asking.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Mr. Hearn, and I do agree that Mrs. Smith provided her comments and the best wishes to our district. She wants to support us and to see us grow. The first thing that's hugely important with this consideration in front of you tonight is that we will have materials that are aligned to the standards. That seems just so amazing to be able to say that, but this is the first time that we've really addressed this in nearly 15 years. From that point, once we have some materials that we know that we're going to be able to use, many of those exact same questions will be there. This is a 6-year adoption, and this gives us an opportunity to really reinvent ourselves along the way and to push ourselves to make sure that we have higher achievement than we do now.
Dr. Nelson, I forgot to add that it was also nice to see the Ed Reports reviewed that curriculum so highly.
Yes, Trustee May, both of the titles that we're proposing to you tonight and recommending to you have perfect scores from Ed Reports, a third party. They are 2 of the only titles that received that. And we don't really look at Ed Reports extensively along the way, but we do that as an affirmation based on the work that we've done over the past couple of years. And it's nice to see that what we are seeing in the possibilities of a curriculum meeting our needs as a district and providing us a platform to be able to grow is really also accepted on that end as well.
Okay. If there's no further questions on this, the motions are on page 188, and it would read, I'll go ahead and read it. A motion to approve the new text as presented, Study Sync by McGraw-Hill for grades 6 through 8, and My Perspectives by Pearsons for grade 9 through 12.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. Next up.
Second on my list for you, Chair Morris Rowe, we have 2 new course proposals. Higher order thinking skills would address a math elective at Lake City High School, but remember, if you do approve these courses, they would be universally allowable throughout our high schools. In addition to that, we have middle school pottery, a new elective that is proposed by Lakes Magnet Middle School. Those have received support from their colleagues at their collegial schools.
So this is on page 196 of the board book.
So I'll make the motion to approve new course proposals as presented, higher order thinking skills at Lake City High School and middle school pottery at Lakes Middle School.
1 second.
Any discussion? Just a point of clarification on that, Dr. Nelson, those titles, those courses would be available at any of this?
That
The
is
high school
correct.
one at any of the high schools, okay.
That is correct, Chair Morris. And that's one of the reasons that we ask our colleagues at the fellow high schools and middle schools to review it, because of course, if you do approve the title for that school that you've mentioned, it is allowable at Coeur d'Alene High School and at Ventura High School. The same for any of our middle schools.
Thank you. So
If I could just add, these are great learning opportunities for kids, and it's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries, Ms. Town. Next up is statistics textbook recommendation. This is on page 197.
Staying in Math World, Chair Morris Rowe, we offer AP statistics at both of our two traditional high schools. However, there was also an interest to have an additional statistics course that could be a precursor after Algebra 2. So this is a course proposal, or a textbook proposal. We actually haven't taught standard statistics in about 8 years. We've only taught the AP level. So this would be a good opportunity for us, and it would be proposed at Coeur d'Alene High School. Right now, they had an initial request of 60, and they're up to 72 students tentatively enrolled in that. So with your approval this evening, we'll have brand new textbooks for our standard statistics course.
Okay, this is on page 197. Is there a motion to approve the textbook as presented, statistics and probability with applications?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Another great opportunity, and statistics is on the SAT. And I think maybe the ISAT too.
It is probability and statistics.
It's important that we teach what they're tested on.
You make just an excellent observation.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And last one up with Dr. Nelson's on page 198. And this is 4th grade Idaho history textbook.
Chair Morris, last year we presented to you a proposal to use the Idaho Adventure. It was a 2012 copyright. And one of the safeguards that we put into place, knowing that a new copyright was coming down the way, is that we did a 1-year adoption. So this now would be a 5-year adoption of physical text for the Idaho Adventure, the brand new 2018 copyright, which was lauded for increased support of Native tribal history and also some more beautiful pictographs of our state.
Dr. Nelson, I had a question on this one. I was looking at the evaluations in the packet, and the evaluations weren't outstanding for this. Are we using this currently, and this is just a new?
Correct. We used the current 2012 edition online only. Okay. We did not buy physical text because it wouldn't be fiscally responsible to be able to do it for just the 1 year. It is the best of all of the options available in Idaho history. As you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of options out there for it.
These weren't great endorsements, and so I was disappointed to see that we're adopting it. But
it is certainly better than what we have, which was a 1996 copyright for this. But I think you'd actually really enjoy it. It's a good coffee table book as well as very informative.
Good.
But I agree with you. There are certainly areas for it to grow. It is a small publisher, and they don't often look at Idaho very often.
Yeah.
So it is certainly a step up to where we have, but far from perfect.
So is there a motion to approve the textbook as presented, Idaho Adventures, copyright 2018?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are almost there.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. This last action item up here is a couple policies we saw last month. Yeah. And it is 7215 Fund Accounting Systems and 8200 Wellness. There were no comments received on 7215, and there were a few comments on 8200 that were in the board packet. More clarification type questions, I think, on those. But any questions on these? Ms. Town, can these be done in one motion? Yes. Okay, this is on page 199. Is there a motion to approve the policies and procedures as presented?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on these two policies? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, just board reports here, so call for committee reports. I don't believe there is any because we haven't had any committee meetings since our last board meeting. A couple of reminders Ms. Town has here at the end. We have our June 18th budget hearing. We have our June 25th budget approval meeting, and then July 2nd will be our annual meeting. Okay.
I forgot to make a quick board comment or a request that I asked you about. Is it too late now, or I can save it for July?
It's regarding a future topic,
discussion,
right?
Report.
No, go for it.
I was hoping that maybe we could take and look at some policy 2620 grading. It was kind of, I think it was almost a year ago that Dr. Cottle brought up unweighting GPAs and just the process, and I feel like this might be the first step in that process is maybe a report from our new superintendent on what are our grading policies. I read the policies and they seem pretty straightforward, but then I hear from parents that they're not maybe as straightforward. So just kind of an update from you or Dr. Cook on what is our policy, are we following it, and if we could educate parents more to what we're doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of ambiguity has been created with kind of the growth mindset and those topics that were covered in previous years. That at least what I hear is you get teachers kind of go in different directions, and there's a lot of difference, and students and parents are kind of conflicted with that practice. So.
And to be honest, after actually reading the policy for the first time, I was confused because the policy is very straightforward. You know, we grade on 90 to 100 is an A, and what I'm hearing from parents is that is not happening. So I'm okay with whatever the school chooses, but just consistency and then educate us so then when parents ask questions, I have the right answers for them.
Yeah, I just actually had a parent approach me about that today. Mm-hmm. And in our student group, a couple students brought that up, if you guys remember, talking about the consistency when we were doing interviews with superintendents. So to hear it from students and parents, I think it's something definitely we need to take a look at.
And I guess the point bringing it up now is that we could talk about it in July, come back in August if we need to take some sort of action and we're ready to go by fall, a consistent plan for whatever the admin team at that school wishes to do. Does that seem reasonable? Or?
Is it on? Yes. No, I think it's something, yes, that we need to look at. I worry about trying to do everything in July and August when we don't have principals and teachers on contract. Okay. And so maybe it's something that we could start and look at in August, so that way we can include, parents, teachers, and the administrators. I just would hate to tackle something without those important groups being a part of the discussion.
My concern was as we start another school year, this is one of the top concerns that we hear is that parents are frustrated that they don't know from class to class how their student's going to be graded. Our policy is clear on grading. I don't see anything about 1 through 4 in our policy. Mm-hmm. So if we just need to revert back to policy until we do future study on it, I think the school just needs to be very clear with parents, or we need to be updated on how to explain this, what we're doing to them. But I think if we wait until the middle of the year, then it's going to be, I don't know. But
I think it's a little more complicated than just our grading policy. I think it's some of the practices. We have some teachers that weight grades. We have, whether they're weighting a test more than they weight homework. Yeah. So I think it's a lot of those little nuances that are part of the problem and not just the consistency with the percents and whether students meet standards or not. I just where I think it's something bigger than we could probably tackle, but we could definitely get started, and then, as we weigh into it and see what's going on.
And maybe start with the workshop model. Maybe it is just August, but at least we could invite the community that we're going to start tackling this topic. Maybe we won't have final resolution in September, but at least, it's in a workshop model where they can be present, we can get feedback, and start the conversation.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I've raised this issue a few times this year. There are plenty of parents out there who are really upset with their kids getting 50% on an assignment that was never done, turning assignments in whenever they feel like it, and until the end of the semester or the grading period.
I'm going to go ahead and pump the brakes on this. We went from a conversation about putting this on a future
but it has
to debating it here
it has
tonight.
to do with the
And so
topic Lisa's raised here. And it should be.
We're not noticed for this, so I'm going to go ahead and say adjourn here in a second. But I'll work, Ken, in the meantime, to figure out when we'll get this on a schedule, and what's kind of the most efficient way, whether we do that in a workshop or maybe we talk a little in July and August, and so yeah.
I think that's a wonderful assignment for Dr. Cook. With your permission, just a note of congratulations to the Pickford family. We have an ISBA scholarship winner in our terrific Taylor Pickford. Congratulations. How wonderful that is.
If there's nothing further, meeting adjourned.